And for those of you on the chat, thank you. Thank you for joining. Hey!
Hey! The first one! Woohoo!
Okay, I know this is going to be good. Laura showed up with energy. She showed up looking amazing. I'm loving the colors. I'm liking the neck scarf. Yes.
And you look pretty hot yourself, babe.
Oh, well, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So, guys, I have got the wonderful Laura here from the Ayurvedic Adventuress. If you're not already following her, get over and do that, okay? And Laura and I are about to dive into the basics of Ayurveda. So before I do that, I kind of want to give Laura a chance, you know, before we start introducing the topic, let's introduce Laura. So Laura, give us a brief overview about who you are and what you do and why you're going to be the one to listen to on this chat today.
Okay, so my background has been working as a chef. I've worked as a private high net worth individuals, and I've worked as a celebrity chef in Moscow, cooking for all the oligarchs at Soho Rooms, the most exclusive club in Europe. And I did that for 5 years. And at that time, I was working in a very kind of stressful environment. It was all about getting the dishes out on time. And by the time I came back to the UK and I was cooking privately again, my health was really deteriorating. I was kind of eating on the go and eating at bad times and faulty food combinations. And I got fat. I got depressed, I got sluggish, I got poor digestion. And I knew that I had to make a change. And so I looked up various places. Where can I go and heal myself? How can I change my energy really quickly? And I looked at various different options. And then I found this place in Sri Lanka that said it was an Ayurveda center. And I kind of had heard about it. I didn't really know what it was, but internally it felt good. And so off I went, and I was there for 3 weeks. And I had some very gentle, first of all, I was vegan. They gave me a vegan menu, which I hadn't had before. I had some very gentle massages. I was doing yoga every day and meditation and different therapies. And despite losing the weight, I think the biggest thing was I had so much energy, and even more than that, this joy. I couldn't believe the joy that resulted in this happiness that I found. I couldn't believe it. That was it. I was hooked.
Did you do a panchakarma by any chance?
I did little bits and pieces of panchakarma, but I didn't do.
Cool. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but yeah, just was interested. Okay, so
and I started studying, and I got my diploma to be a consultant in diet, health, nutrition, and Ayurveda. And then I took myself off to New Zealand, the closest place I could find to actually do a certified course to be an Ayurveda chef. And I'm still learning all the time, because Ayurveda, it translates as science of life. So I'm just corralling all of that into this little bit, but probably one of the most important bits, which is our relationship to food.
Well, that is a great segment into my very first question, okay? Because you're explaining here what the word itself in its etymology means. You know, Ayurveda is the science of life. I would love you to speak a little bit on really what Ayurveda is. And I know it's a very broad discussion, but, you know, like, bring it down to us to kind of its core principles and the foundation of what it is.
Yeah, sure. So it's a life science that originally was passed down vocally, and it was sung, it was vocally passed down for thousands of years. Then it was written down, and they say actually the information comes from nature. There's not one person that is said to have written it. I mean, there's a massive bulk of work about it. But in a nutshell, it's about aligning ourselves with nature, having an internal dialogue, and finding balance in our life. And with and if you're not in balance, it gives you very easy tips to get back into balance. And it sees that we're all made up of the 5 elements, the universal elements, which is space, air, fire, water, earth. And our natural constitution is made up of these elements, but divided into three groups called doshas, which are...
And I'm going to pause you on that because I don't want to go too far ahead. I've got a few more questions for you before we get into the doshas. Okay, so I'm going to pause you on that good stuff. Sure. All right, but my next question, sorry, and I don't want to slow your roll, but I just want to make sure that I don't get too far ahead of kind of the general journey of our discussion. Now, I wanted to ask you as well, because what you said was really interesting. You said you went to Sri Lanka to get started with Ayurveda. Now, from my experience, and then, you know, anybody else maybe who's on here listening, when I first was introduced to it, it was in Sri Lanka's bigger sister, which was India. And I'm wondering if you could maybe speak a little bit about kind of the roots of Ayurveda, like where it's come from, you know?
Well, they say it is actually a universal science, but the roots are originally from India. That is where it's has been taught, where it's in their culture. Many Indians, they do things because grandma, you know, told them to have hot water and lemon juice first thing in the morning. They don't even know why they're doing it. It's just part of the culture. And unfortunately, when the British went in, we kind of severed those ties, because their spirituality was so strong. It was the only way that they could take over the country, you know, with colonialism. But anyway, I don't want to go off track.
We're kind of good at that, aren't we? Well, one of the things I definitely noticed when I was kind of, you know, I don't want it to be things about my journey in Ayurveda, very much about yours. But one of the things that I look at when I go to a place and I start looking at that, is there something here for me? And I start looking at the people around me, and I started looking at the general lifespan and the way that the elders in these communities looked, and their mobility and how they were aging, and their vibrancy and their vitality. And one of the things that really attracted me to Ayurveda, as you said, was that I was like, some of the elders in this community, like, they could outrun a 20-year-old, you know, like they're strong, healthy people.
Yes.
And I think when you start seeing that, when we come from a Western culture where kind of like, you know, people hitting 50, 55 and they becoming breaking down and on a decline rather than still maintaining their vitality, that was something that very much interested me about what these Ayurvedic practices was. And then especially more so when I realized, okay, they're not prescribing like over-the-counter stuff. It was kind of like everything we need is already been provided to us, within nature. Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's all okay. So go ahead, please.
No, well, it's all the different elements and how we relate to those elements, and are we listening to chatter in our head or what our body is telling us?
You also said something which kind of makes me feel a little bit silly, because I'm like, I haven't heard of that one. You said that one of the elements was space. Can you talk on that a bit more? Because I'm gonna get notes out here.
Well, we need space in order for there to be air, in order to be fire. That it's everything is interconnected. We have space within our body. We have, you know, within our molecules, we have space. It's all about how the micro and the macro, everything is interconnected. And I think one of the biggest problems right now is where so many people are unconnected. And again, it kind of goes back to you were asking me about the doshas, and we're all made up of all of these elements. And for example, the vata dosha is all about movement and communication, and I would say we both have a lot of vata in our system. We're both, you know, we both move a lot, and we both have busy heads, But then we also have pitta, which is the fire. It's more fire, and it's how we metabolize and how we digest. But it's also, you know, that's also kind of strong and determined headed people. We also have that, I would say, within us. And then you have kapha, which is more sort of the mother earth. It's more earth and water. It's about our physicality, lubrication, structure. And those doshas, they also reflect in the characters of people. And so it's our body build as well as our characteristics. And but it relates to everything, those five elements.
Now, I remember when we were speaking, and like I want to kind of go a little bit more into the doshas, but one of the things I remember finding very interesting, and I totally agreed with when we spoke, was I know from my own kind of dive into Ayurveda, it was very much dosha based, you know. It was all about finding your dosha, understanding it, and learning how to work with it. So I kind of just want to take a few steps and like look at what are the things that people are normally doing to like identify their dosha. Because I know that there are probably people that are listening in or will listen in on the replay who are like, well, how can I like apply any of this to myself if I don't know what my dosha or my constitution is made up of? And like, as you quite rightly pointed out, you know, like there's often a bit of more, you're rarely one specific dosha. You may be predominant in one area, but you tend to be, you know, a little bit predominantly one and then a bit of the other. So what advice or what tips would you give people in terms of if they want to know how to find out what their dosha is?
Okay, so, well, first of all, online, you can just tap in dosha quiz. And there's quite a few of them online. You can just do it free, and the information.
Do you think they're accurate? I've always been curious about that. Like I've done quite a few, and sometimes sometimes the result isn't always the same, you know?
You'll normally be asked to do two. One, how you've always been, and one, how you currently are. So how you were, the constitution you have is you were born with it. It's your prakriti. It's what you were on the moment that you were born. It's your natural constitution.
Okay.
You can go out of balance, out of alignment through change of season, through eating too much, through disease, through emotional upset, and all of those things will send you out of balance. So that's the thing that will change your imbalance. I don't want to use too many Sanskrit words because it goes.
Because I'm like, hold on, chakrati, and I'm like, there are going to be people going, what is she talking about? But no, I think it's important to know like that this has these Sanskrit foundations, but then looking at what does that word mean in like plain old regular English, you know, for like the people on this call now, in terms of, I said we're looking at like finding out what your doshas were. I know you spoke quite briefly just a little bit earlier, but maybe we can go a little bit deeper into this in terms of how these doshas manifest and show up. And like, I'll, you know, go ahead of you and say, I've always found myself to be like heavily pitta, you know, like fire, fire, fire. And like it shows up in many different areas of my life. But when I started to really kind of look at Ayurveda as a system of kind of helping me recover from a burnout, I was an absolute mess when I came to this kind of work and this kind of system, was that my gut health was a mess, you know, like I'd had lots and lots of antibiotics and I hadn't kind of been able to like recover, and I was having a lot of problems with digestion and really being able to like absorb my food properly and not constantly feel ill by my food. And that was one of the things that I was finding was quite normal in a lot of pitta type personalities. Yeah, just wonder if you can speak to that type of thing a bit.
So, well, with pitta, because it's fire. Okay, so first of all, like attracts like, and the opposite brings balance. And so, for example, if you are a fiery pitta, you would tend to be in character somebody who's not aggressive, but somebody who wants to get from A to B without all the fluffy words. So you can come across as being a little bit on the angsty, a bit kind of forward aggressive, but
abrupt, quite abrupt.
Exactly. But all you want to do is you just want to get your point across and do it in the quickest amount of time possible. It shows up in heat and inflammation. And so basically to keep yourself in balance, you would try and stay away, for example, from having chili on all your food and having hot spices, because that's just going to like attracts like. What you'd want to do is have more cooling type fennel and cumin seeds and more kind of, and coconut, all kind of more gentle things. Because if you're going to keep going on spicy and hot and as well, like competitive sports, for example, that all increases, it's all heat going up, it's all that digestion and how you assimilate your food. Whereas Vata people, they tend to have more sort of dry skin, more kind of floaty. They're more like creative people. Think like Bob Dylan, for example, Mick Jagger, these people that have a lot of energy. So the Vata tend to be people with more like dry skin. And so again, with that, for example, the like attracts like, you'd want to stay away from crackers and hummus. Because that's going to good stuff. Out even more. And then with the Vata type people, the Kapha type people, which is the more that they tend to be a little bit more sedentary, but they're the real kind of the Mother Earth people. Think of Oprah Winfrey, for example. She's got these beautiful eyes that it manifests itself in the features as well. Think like Jennifer Lopez, Antonio Banderas, these bigger type people. So if they're going to
statuesque type of people,
yeah. So they can go in two ways. They either can be amazing athletes or they can be more couch potato. So they need to have more. They need to be out of their comfort zone. They need to be doing more strenuous exercise. They need to have energizing spices within their food to keep them in this balance. And so with Kapha people, because they would tend to have quite sort of moist skin, they should have more drying type foods, more energizing and drying type foods to keep them in balance. And so
now I'm really sorry to cut you off. I'm really curious as well in terms of, well, you know, you and I both know about kind of the imbalances and like how it starts to show up in our individual bodies. But I'm wondering if you could share for, you know, our people that are on the live now and those who listen to the replay, kind of what they should be looking out for as signs that they are a little bit out of balance and maybe need to kind of address how they're, you know, their daily routines, how they're eating, what they're consuming, both, you know, physically and emotionally as well, you know?
Well, it's so personal how people feel, and how will it manifest itself? It will manifest itself with, are you feeling, how is your body weight? How are your joints? Do you wake up and you're like, way, here we go? Or do you wake up feeling sluggish, maybe a little bit depressed or a little bit kind of down? I mean, especially during this time. I mean, I have to admit, I'm doing really good during this time. I'm spending my time really positive, yoga, walks in nature, doing lots of study. So, you know, all things to stay positive. So I have lots of daily routines and healthy daily routines. Just adding a couple of little things into your day will make so much difference. Eating at just going to want to sleep in the afternoon, but a heavier meal, and switch it from where we normally have dinner. And if you can try and have dinner a bit earlier, so that by the time you finished eating, that you're really processing your food, you're assimilating, you're digesting it. Because if you go to bed on a full stomach, you can't your body's not going to be really repairing itself. It's going to be so busy with the digestion process that you need to have, 3 hours before you go to sleep so that you can really metabolize. So during the day, you're going to be all the stimulation of the day, everything you smell, touch, taste, hear. You're absorbing all of that information. And you need your body to repair itself kind of between the times of 10 and
It almost needs
2.
to shut down, right?
Those
Your body
4
almost
hours.
needs to shut down to process it.
Yeah, those 4 hours are the time where you don't want to be digesting. You want that to be out of the way so that the next 4 hours, the most important 4 hours for repair of the body, you can digest all of those things that you've heard and tasted and smells and there's so much subconscious that we don't even we know about that we're absorbing, elements in the air and etc. So
Okay. So one of the things I personally took a lot from when just kind of like exploring the different practices in Ayurveda, and like I will hold my hands up and say I had none of it before I started, and it's still very much something I have to work on daily to kind of keep in place, was, dinacharya, having a daily routine. And I can speak for myself. That was something that I always thought was like boring. You know what I mean? Like cool people that have daily routines and things that they do every day. Like they just get up and like do kind of what they want, or like what's they do a gut check. What do I feel like doing today? And I've realized, to me personally, that led to me making some really poor choices and poor decisions. And one of the things that I got from kind of diving into those Ayurvedic practices was that there were like developing a routine didn't have to be this kind of like 50-point list of things that you do, but it could actually be this small condensed list of just small daily consistent practices that you did that were accumulative in the benefits to you, because I think it's important with like when we looking at any wellness, or like looking at being balanced in any area, that we don't think that we could have had terrible habits for 25 years and then do this for like 3 days and feel amazing. Like that there's a level of consistency that needs to be adhered to in order for you to start reaping the benefits of those routines.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that Ayurveda really asks you to do is to listen to your body. Listen to your body more than the chatter in your head, because the chatter in your head is saying, Laura, you've got to finish that email, that document, that whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tired. It's like, coming on for 11:30 and I'm so tired and I've got to finish it. But my body is so exhausted, and it's just a case of listen to the body, not to the chatter in the head. Because, that is sometimes your chatter is your worst enemy.
I totally agree. And I think a really important thing is as well, and maybe you can speak to this as well, as I think so many of us are so up here in our heads, and we have got so used to, as you said, listening to that we've become desensitized even to, some of the things our bodies tell us are incredibly subtle, or they start out subtle until your body's like, oh really? I gave you all the subtle warnings and you didn't want to listen.
Yeah.
Have that, it's like, if you don't want to listen to the subtle warnings, I'm gonna sit you down for a little bit so that you can get it, and I'm wondering if you've got any tips that you can share that will give people like some ways that they can start to listen, or know what to listen to within their body, so that when they're feeling or sensing or experiencing certain things, they realize that this is the body speaking to them.
Well, everyone is going to have different aches and pains and ailments. And so because it's the thing that I'm most passionate about, I'm going to push it a little bit in this direction. But our relationship with food and how we digest our food, it's even not so much about what we eat, but how we digest it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important. And so one of the things I'm going to suggest is that always try and have the 6 tastes in every meal, which is the sweet, sour, salty, pungent, bitter, and astringent, which may sound like, what the hell? But if you
Can
think,
you say that again? Because you said that pretty fast. Can you just say
oh,
that again a little bit slowly so everybody can get that? Because it's really
okay, so
important.
we have 6 tastes: sweet, sour, salty, pungent, bitter, and astringent. And if that sounds like a really complicated thing to have within a meal, if you think that you're just going to have like a little side salad, for example, with your meal, then and the lettuce doesn't even have to be raw lettuce. It's much easier actually to digest all cooked food. You could even get, you know, like a little baby cos lettuce, stick it in the pan on a char grill, for example, and just sort of warm it through a little bit. Quite acceptable. And then once you've made your little olive oil and of lemon juice dressing with salt and pepper, you're already most of the way there with those tastes. But when you have those tastes, it means that you're not going to have cravings later. Well, especially cravings for sweetness, which is one of
And
one of
salt me
one of
too.
the things. And then I would
Can
say,
I ask you? Sorry, go ahead.
and I would just say,
So I didn't mean to cut you off.
sit down when you're eating. Don't be eating like a zombie on your computer, watching TV, and or whatever on your electronica. Just try and just focus on the food and enjoy the food that you have with like just a moment of gratitude, because wow, the amount of hands that have brought your plate there for a start, and then all the different spices you have, all the different veggies that you have. That's a lot of people working, delivering, growing, whatever. Just a moment of, God, I'm really lucky, just real appreciation. That helps digestion as well.
What I'm really hearing from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is slowing down, you know,
Yeah.
slowing down to be
Put your partner,
mindful and to be present
yeah.
so that you can actually, yeah, just like, as you said, like, I think a lot of us are used to like eating with our phone in one hand, you know what I mean, and texting and shoveling food, or, you know, we've got our food next to us whilst we're typing, or we're watching food in front, we're eating food in front of the television and stuff. And I know I
Guilty
definitely,
for all of that. All of that. I'm
all
guilty.
of
I've done
that.
all of it. And that's
Now,
why I want to share the things that I learned.
brilliant. I also think that contributes as well to excessive eating, because sometimes we don't know
Yeah.
when we're full. We're just like
Yeah.
shoveling food in our mouths. Now, I'm mindful of the time. I don't want this to run too long, but I've got 2 more questions for you. And I wanted you to, my question is, if anybody wanted to learn a bit more about, not the kind of like high level Ayurveda, but the basics of Ayurveda, are there any resources that you would recommend that are, you know, like easy to understand, you know, where it's not like
Well,
12 letter long Sanskrit words that we're not going to get, you
okay.
know?
Well, one of the first books that I read um, is by Dr. Mark Halpin, and he started off the California College of Ayurveda. But he writes his story in there, and it's really relatable. It's a really relatable story, and then he introduces the concepts, but not in a way where it's you just like, oh, put it in the too hard basket. You can read it as a nice and understand it. So I would say that. There's also some amazing documentaries that you can see on YouTube. And so that's how I would start. You really want to go.
So Dr. Mark Halpern and everybody's teacher university, the University of YouTube. Now, before we jump off, my goal with this is, and you've definitely already shared some incredible tips, so thank you. Before we leave, if you had to share your top 3 tips that anybody, man, woman, boy, or girl, could do to start incorporating more of the philosophy of Ayurveda into their life, at a very basic level, you know, not anything that they need to, you know, study to do, what would those 3 things be?
Okay. Well, again, I'm going to go back to the digestion bits.
Repetition, 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 sis. I totally agree with that.
So I drink this really wonderful tea, which is cumin, coriander, and fennel, whole seeds of. I do a teaspoon of each. And the combination of these is just, it's wonderful for digestion. Anyone can drink it. It's not going to send anyone out of alignment. And it's just a really beautiful herbal homemade infusion. And you can have it to, you know, to brew for 10 minutes, sip it throughout the day. That's cumin, coriander, and fennel. And within the Ayurvedic community, it's really well known just because it tastes delicious.
Oh my God. CCF, you see it everywhere. CCF, CCF, you know?
Yeah. So I would suggest that everyone can start off with that because it's a lovely thing. It's a lovely thing to make.
And that's something you can have any time of the day. In the morning, before you eat. You can have it after food, at any time. Yeah? Okay.
The second one would be eat fruit alone or leave it alone, because everyone loves a banana milkshake. But milk and dairy, milk and bananas, for example, it's a really poor combination. Yogurt and fruit and granola, that used to be one of my most favorite things. It's really difficult for the body to digest. I mean, just imagine you've had, like, you know, your meal and then somebody gives you a fruit salad. That is immediate indigestion, because that food that you've just eaten is going to take like 6 to 8 hours to go through your system. And the fruit normally should take like 20 minutes, but it can't kind of be digested any quicker. So it's just going to sit there at the top. It's going to start fermenting and you're going to start getting hiccups and burpees and all the rest of it. And it's going to just be messy. So eat fruit alone or leave it alone would be my second tip. And I guess something that everyone can try, and I love this, your body is so perfect, it will tell you when you've had enough food, but you have to listen out for your little burp. So when you're eating mindfully, and I'm not talking a massive belch here, it's just like a little hiccup, and it's a natural reaction. Everyone has it. But when you've got to the point where you've eaten enough, your body will tell you, because you'll have this little hiccup, and it's incredible. Once you've experienced it for the first time and you continue mindful eating, you'll know, you're like, I've had my burp, I've got to stop eating now, because that's your.
Now we've got a question that's come up here, and I think it's related to what you was talking about in terms of the banana milkshake. And somebody said, what about with oat milk? So I think the question is it that dairy is the poor combo, or is it liquids that's the poor combo?
Well, what about, Debs, what about just water? I've been having it just with water, or for example, a coconut water would even be better. I mean, I do love oat milk. That's what I've started doing, because, you know, the way that we process milk here is just so not how nature intended, nature presented us with. It's a boiled, homogenized mess. So yes, I think oat milk is great, because it used to be almond milk, but then when you think, oh, I'm doing so good for the environment, and then you understand
how the almonds are harvested
and all the rest of it. So I would say, just, you know, if you're going to have a fruit shake, just have it with water. It's fantastic. It's really, you really taste the fruit then. You don't need the other stuff.
Brilliant. Now we have come to the natural end of today. We run over a little bit, but I see you guys that started. Many of you are still on. I want to say, Laura, thank you so much for showing up today. Thank you for this wealth of knowledge of information that you've shared. Can you let everybody know where they can find you if they want to learn more about, you know, the food element of Ayurveda, because that's very much a huge part of it. Let people know where they can find you, whether it's your website, your Instagram, etc. So
yeah, my Instagram, my Ayurvedic Adventuress. I put up. I've got in fact, I've got interviews coming up. I've got cooking in the kitchen. I've got recipe, and there's a lot of happiness. I put a lot of happiness on my Instagram as well, because how is that related? Well, it is related, because if you're eating all stressed with a knotty tummy, you're not going to digest your food as well as if you're in a relaxed, calm, happy, nice state. You see, it's all interconnected.
Well, you are definitely vibrant and glowing and shining. And on that good note, I'm going to say namaste, my vibrant, glowing sis. And thank everybody for showing up today. Yes. I hope you guys are going to join me this time next week, 8 p.m. every Wednesday. I'm going to give you those 3 suggestions again for this weekly segment. And I'd love to hear your opinion, actually, Laura. And let me know in the comments what I should be calling the show, because it's going to be this name next week. So option number 1 is A7 TV. Option number 2 is That Vedic Life. And option number 3 is The Work. So Laura, what was your favorite?
I kind of like the first one, actually, because it's kind of related. I love The Work. I think that could be a tagline.
Brilliant. So A7 TV is what I'm hearing from you. All right, guys. Thank you.
Yay.
Wonderful. My name's Stacey. This is Apothecary7. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for listening in to Laura and I wax on about Ayurveda. I hope that we have sparked your interest, your curiosity, that you will go and do your own research. Don't take everything we say. Go find things out for yourself, and go over and check out Laura at the Ayurvedic Adventuress. And until then, speak soon.
Yay.
Bye. Take care.